Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 2 of Marvel's M.O.D.O.K. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I love the kids are dividing up like, oh, this belongs to Lou's, like, this belongs to me. Alyssa's like, this is mine. And then they get to the extension cord, and she's like, no, Dad said that, it's like he would want me to have this because obviously it goes to the TV, and it's like, yeah, that's something like Dad would say. And it's like, stop talking to me like I'm dead. I'm just moving out. I also love that they didn't want the robot dude, and he was just like, you rotten kids. Oh, I'm sorry I called you guys rotten. And it's like, they called him, like, oh, it's a toaster talking. He was like, I'm going to wait for you guys. Oh, toaster. Oh, I'll show you a toaster. I'll wait till you guys get in a bath, and then I'm going to jump in and electrocute you. And they're like, we don't take baths together anymore. He's like, I know. Oh, time is moving so fast. I was like, this robot dude is all over the place. But obviously, M.O.D.O.K. is, being forced to move out, and obviously he's doing everything he can to be like, oh man, my schedule's so booked, and it's like, hey, look over there. Yes, 3 more seconds of me basically staying here. But also, like, she pulls out like a 3 Eyes Blind CD, and it's like, oh, we would have gone to a concert 17 years ago, but we never did. I wonder why. And so now M.O.D.O.K. has solidified it in his mind that he's going to go back in time. Obviously, number one assistant, Gary, is there helping and everything. Obviously, Gary's like, yeah, I'm suffering from the phantom limb thing, my favorite arm and everything. It's just like, Jesus, Gary, shut up about your personal life as I go on about saving my personal life, and everything. I also love, like, they take, like, those 1-minute breaks every hour. That's interesting. I don't know, I thought that was just such an interesting little detail. Like, every 59 minutes, they take up, like, a 1-minute break, it's just, oh, it's for the employees. And it's like, okay. He's like, oh, fix relationship, become a car guy, then at the top of it, kill Austin, of his, like, to-do list. And it's like, oh, yeah, it turns out Austin's, like, allergic to strawberry jelly or whatever. It's like, he came off so villainous, at least, like, near the end of the last episode, but he's so, like, bro-ish, being like, yo, M.O.D.O.K, oh, we're so cool, yada, 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 let's hit it, let's get together, after the next 59 minutes and stuff like that. I'm like, so it's like, oh, I guess you're not as villainous as I think you are, or, I don't know. I also love the whole thing of, like, I forgot, he said something, and Monica was like, more like the top of Shit Mountain. He was like, Shit Mountain doesn't exist, that's something she just made up. I'm like, he got so defensive about it. But, like, I need you to know, Austin, there is no such thing as Shit Mountain. She completely made that up. But they do time travel back in time. Obviously, it's like, he doesn't... Well, first and foremost, he had this sneak aboard S.H.I.E.L.D. to find it, because they stole it. And I love him putting on, like, oh yeah, from Chicago. And then Gary's talking about he's from... What was it? Like, he said he was from Ohio. It sounded like he had, like, an Australian accent or something. Like, that doesn't necessarily correlate. But it's also like, well, for one, we don't have any water things here for you to replace. Also, how the hell did you get up here in this helicarrier that's literally flying in the air? It's like, well, plan B, he grabs Gary and throws him. I wonder, is that supposed to be a wink and nod to, I forgot, he called it something specific, but I'm like, is that supposed to be like a wink and nod to Loki? Because I forgot what Thor called it in Thor Ragnarok, but it was like a game they play where basically Thor would grab Loki and throw him at a guy. I was like, was that supposed to be like a wink and nod to that, or is that something else entirely? But, oh yeah, here's Cerebro. What's I'm like, why do you have your hands on that? Shouldn't the X-Men have that? Or is that, once again, I'm thinking too much about stuff. I'm like, or is that supposed to imply, like, how, like, this isn't in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I'm wondering, like, when this was in production, did they not have access to the X-Men? I mean, they skirt lines with some of their, like, animated stuff, even at the time, because I know, like, Ultimate Spider-Man, but that might also be because, like, Marvel might not have even had that at the time, but I know, like, X-Men popped up in that, so I'm like, I'm curious. Once again, thinking too much? Most likely, but it's just interesting to think about, like, why S.H.I.E.L.D. would have, like, Cerebro. It's like, maybe it's just kind of like Professor X isn't around right now, so it's like, I don't know. Whatever the case may be, he has his time travel device, and so I love that it's like, it's like, hey, Jodie, let's go back in time and stuff like that. Also, she's all about that, like, what was that, Bumble Gumba or whatever it was, and he was like, why are you so obsessed with that? She's like, yeah, they have the best rice. It's really good rice. But they're like, yeah, let's go back in time, and they end up not at the concert. They end up there 4 years early, and then there's M.O.D.O.K. Torturing a dude because it's like, you ate M.O.D.O.K.'s ramen, and so just when he's like, yeah, I know how to fix all this. It's like, oh wow, I stuck something in this particular place and it activated. So let's like, obviously knowing nothing about it, which clarifies why later on he's like, yeah, I actually didn't invent this. Monica did. Which really quickly, first and foremost, it was kind of like this heartwarming moment of like when they are there at the concert and everything, and it's just like, once again, it's like how they fell in love and everything. We kind of get a tiny peek into that story, but it was interesting how like they're at the concert and it's like he blasts some people out of the way, and she's like crowd surfing, and he was like, yeah, you better grab on, like you better hold on to my wife, you better you right there, like work with your knees and support her back, and you have a round face, so you're supposed to wear square glasses. But also, it's like, yeah, don't forget about Child Slaughter. Yes, Child Slaughter, the band. I'm like, I don't know why I got giddy at that. I was like, okay, that one got me for whatever reason. But then it's like, he wants to be there with his wife because she's having so much fun and enjoying herself. And it's like, but I'm also here to kill Austin. But all I'm doing is like, oh yeah, like references one of Child Slaughter's songs. And it's like, yeah, kind of follow. You can do both or whatever. And he's like, yeah. And he goes off. And then it's like, yeah, you should follow him. And then Jody's like, is that a Child Slaughter song? He's like, no, that's just my personal opinion or something of that nature. So, and it's like, oh, should I really kill him? Yeah, he grows up to steal my business, but I will be doing boy murder. Which I love that was the phrase, doing boy murder. But he was like, oh, it's like, no, maybe he's an evil kid. And it's like, oh, like, he's the smallest person to ever give, like, bone marrow or something. He's got a reward for that. Oh, a picture he drew, I love my mom and stuff like that. So he is a good-natured kid working at a soup kitchen. So it's like, but he's dead set on killing a kid, but then it's like, oh, Jody finds out, oh, you just showed up here to kill him. Like, that's all I was. I was just kind of an add-on to this. Which is sad because his initial intentions were to time travel to save his family, but it was almost more, well, initially I was about to say, I have to take it back because killing Austin didn't move to the top of the list, so it kind of defeats the purpose a little bit. But yeah, he engages in battle with his college self because his college self got sucked into the time warp too, and it's like, oh, I'm going to, like, the fact is you're a disappointment, you're not who I thought you were, like, you're with this woman with the wide hips or something like that. And he was like, yeah, I eventually learned that I love woman. I think he literally said, like, with a juicy old butt or something like that. And so, proceed to fight himself, and then like the time device ended up shattering, breaking in his face, and he gets warped away, and she's like, oh my god, are you about to disappear? He's like, oh my god, my leg, so much pain. Oh, it's a Lego. Which I started going like, wait, once again, because if you haven't learned anything recently, I'm a nut for time travel, so I was legitimately curious, like, where they were going to go. Like, I was like, oh, are you going to vanish? No, it seems like you're still here. So it's like, they kind of implied like, well, later on they like ran, it's like, oh, this is why we didn't go to that concert, because it turns out that's the night we found out I was pregnant with Melissa. So it kind of shows like, okay, he does eventually go back to his time, that maybe in some roundabout way things kind of worked out. But then part of me is also wondering about parallel timelines. Like, I was wondering in that moment, it's like, well, their timeline is solidified. Maybe we're going by in-game rules, and so we're splintering off different timelines. Maybe that's kind of where we're going with that. I was wondering, because I was also thinking like we might be in like paradox rules of like, yeah, your past self got sent off somewhere else, and he never kind of went back. So the whole thing creates a paradox situation. Which the fact is that you are there, obviously thinking he's like, what was it he was saying, that we need to have something for, because basically all his dreams were dead now. Literally pulled a gun to shoot himself in the head. That was pretty rough. But obviously now they're stuck in the past, and it's like, well, we got to go to Monica for help, but Monica doesn't know how to make the time travel yet. Because it's like, right, I never said I invented it. I said I indented it while Monica was inventing it. So that, I guess that leads to why she has such resentment towards him, because once again she looked up to him and to find out, oh, you're this loser, I'm actually a better villain than you are. To be fair, we haven't really actually seen her in action. All we've ever honestly seen her do so far is shit talk. So that's about it. But younger version of herself, and it's like, oh, I have a good heart and everything. It's like, oh, how'd you become the villain that you became? And it's even Jody being like, this is the person that like makes fun of you all the time. It's like, yeah, she says some very hurtful lies that are very true about my body. I was like, oh, you actually feel bad for M.O.D.O.K in that moment. But then it's like, I love the situation of like he ruined what she was working on, and the guy was like, "No, we're gonna give it to Billy," and she's like, "What? Billy's clock doesn't even work." And he was like, "Yes, but imagine if it does. Damn, I'm a good guidance counselor. I lost it. I don't know why that, just like that confidence. I'm like, damn, I'm a good guidance counselor. Leave the science to the boys." And it's like, oh, cool. So once again, this inadvertently, M.O.D.O.K ended up, well, at least the way we were depicting this timeline, that M.O.D.O.K ended up being the reason why she became the villain that she does. And maybe that later on leads to her resenting him so much. But once again, parallel timeline. The way the episode ends, which we'll get to later, I'm like, how much of that stays? It seems like that was all kind of undone at the moment. So, like, none of it. It's always interesting with time travel, stuff like that, too, because you can almost be like, oh, none of this mattered. Because all the growth and everything we went through literally doesn't matter because it got undone. That's like the very like cynical side of things. It's like, you know, because sometimes it's like, oh, like the journey is what matters and not the destination. And it's like, no, it's situations like that. It can get in your head to be like, so that was all. So you're telling me it was all for nothing. Very much like the whole like Stewie Griffin and Brian simulation bit about like if he killed Lois and stuff like that. That whole episode when Brian was like, really? So that means if someone was watching these like sequences of events, it was just kind of be like a big middle finger to them, wouldn't it be? It's kind of a similar thing we actually kind of think about. Once again, we'll kind of get there in a second. But I love that they were kind of stuck there, and Jodie just didn't want to be. She'd rather spend the time alone in the past. So they're stuck there in the past for like the next 9 months. He's at like some, like almost like a furniture place with a meatball version of his wife. That he ends up getting kicked out. Turns out she's living in the woods and whatnot. I love that. It's like, oh, this is us when we were at our lowest, where we didn't have a lot of money. But he was like, that version of us has a lot more money than I did. So it's like, so you're robbing your poor selves because at least your poor self wasn't as broke as you are. It's like, that's crazy. That's some next level stuff. But it turns out Jodie was outside, like, watching, and, like, her and M.O.D.O.K watch, and it's like, oh, like, look as we see, like, the kids get older, we see, like, you know, Melissa get older, killing that cat, Jesus, and then Lou and everything, and it's just like, I was like, oh, this seems like time's moving. It doesn't seem like, I was like, oh, they're growing old watching themselves, because I think it's like, oh man, look at our story unfold. It's like, and watching their story unfold, we didn't really get to see it, but I'm assuming it's like they came back every once in a while to keep an eye on things, while also kind of, it helped inadvertently bring them closer together. I wonder, did it take them all, like, did it take at the very end when they kind of like lean on each other, like, was that the moment they got back together, or were they back together the entire time watching their love story? So it's actually really interesting and actually really sweet, because it's like, right, we see like our family get built and our love story expand, and at the same time it kind of leads to us kind of falling in love again. And then they waited to present day, and then they stopped M.O.D.O.K from using the time, that version of M.O.D.O.K from doing it. But it's like, right, we should have told them that we belong to, and you know, it not only undid everything, so that timeline is erased. Just all that shenanigans of what went down was erased. So, and it's like, oh, I wonder what they were saying, but Jodie's like, I'm just done, goodbye. Also love that turkey. So I guess like it's interesting to note that. So I know that turkey. If I remember, like, Melissa and Lou were both super young at that time. I could be mistaken about when they showed that. I don't remember, like, because I'm about to say that turkey's been out and about for a while, which M.O.D.O.K was like, sorry, Turkey, we just don't have time for that. So, obviously, him and the robot are living in their place, and I love that guy is like, oh yeah, I'm going to come down there, stick my foot up your ass, or like stomp on you. Who are you? He's like, oh, I'm that Polish old lady that lives next door. He's like, yes, because he's got his own plan to build like this republic for M.O.D.O.K. It's like, I'm going to get back AIM, I'm going to get back my family, and it kind of all starts here. But then we find out like college M.O.D.O.K is now here in this time line and frame, and he's here to kind of correct his future. It's like, yeah, M.O.D.O.K, you're a failure because you didn't end up being what I had imagined my life would be. You know, you're kind of a laughingstock and everything. So, and I'm also here to ensure that Dippin' Dots became the future ice cream that was always meant to be, which I find funny on multiple levels. Because for one, I've always heard people be like, Dippin' Dots isn't that great, or almost like it's overrated or something like that. I've had Dippin' Dots maybe once or twice in my entire life. It was like near my adulthood when I tasted it for the first time. So, I mean, it was cool. Like, I kind of like most ice cream anyway. So I just maybe that line was made for people who were just like, right, who are like very like, oh, thank Dippin' Dots is sub tier or something like that. Like I said, a lot of interesting things. Once again, I'm always a big fan of time travel, but I'm curious to see where the next episode ends up taking us with all of this. I should have brought it up last episode. I am going to try and release these all at the same time. Not at the same time, but like at least 30 minutes to an hour apart. So whether, I don't know, these probably won't go up Saturday because, like I said, I'm still watching these one at a time. It's like almost 4 in the morning at the time you're recording this, Saturday morning. At least this particular episode. So maybe these will go up Sunday because I'll probably be able to finish it all today and also work on something else and get started on reviewing another show. But regardless, that's some very behind the scenes stuff. Really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.